What's up, guys? I am back for another episode of my mission experiences here. Um, as the last episode ended, I was saying how I was emergency transferred out of Gaiman in Treleo to my new zone in Comodoro. So I went to the mission headquarters, and that's where we'll pick up in this episode, and we'll take a couple of minutes to kind of look over a couple pictures that I had from Gaiman, and then we will move on to some stuff from Comodoro. So I wrote this big long thing here, and I was super sad. I didn't realize that when I was in Gaiman, I had 18 lessons, 9 new investigators, and 2 baptismal dates set. And we even had 2 people in the ward or in sacrament with us, I guess. But that was pretty crazy. So this is an online picture of of Comodoro Rivadavia. It's crazy because that is exactly how I remember the city being. So it's pretty cool. Let's see here. This is Elder Tony and I in our apartment. I don't know why that's there, but that's kind of funny. We didn't have very much time together. We ended up being in the same zone. He was my zone leader at the very end of my mission. He went home one transfer before me, but it was kind of a bummer because he was a great missionary and I really wanted to learn a lot from him. It didn't end up happening, sadly, but I learned a lot from him in the short time I had with him and the experiences I had with him. Here's the elders from Parque Uno. This is Elder Reskin. He ends up being my companion a couple months down the line. This is Elder Aquino. He was from Chile and he was from Paraguay. He was raised in Paraguay, I believe. So they would play. There's a game called Truco in Argentina. We'd play Truco with them on the night of Christmas, and they kicked our butts because they were speaking Guarani to each other. And then Elder Tony and I got our butts kicked because I didn't speak Spanish, neither did he really, and so it was kind of fun. But that was that, and this is their apartment that had rats all over in it, so that was fun. Here's a picture of me at my house early in the morning, I believe. Yeah, I think this was earlier in the morning. One morning I was drinking a mate cocido or something, and I thought those sunglasses were sick, so why not? There's a little bookcase behind me, and this is where my desk was. It pointed towards that. And then this is the alarm system that went off. I didn't press the button on that. There was a little remote that set off the alarm system, so kind of fun. There's one of my white shirts hanging up in the background. And this was one of my favorite ties. This is the tie that I traded with my trainer when he left. Here is the zone of Treleo. Crazy, crazy zone. Huge zone. It was just known for just being really big, having lots of missionaries, and having a lot of success. So it was kind of a bummer to have to leave this zone, but it is what it is, I guess. Here's our funny picture in the zone, so it's kind of funny. This was the, zone. So it was crazy because for Christmas, my mission president let us watch a video or a movie that he selected, and so we watched Lego Batman. So this was us eating pizza, I believe, after the Lego Batman. This was Elder Walker. Actually, I see him from time to time up here in Idaho, I believe, or somebody that looks really similar to him. Anyways, Elder Walker was super cool, super tall guy. And then this was Sister Austin and Sister Malphorus, and everybody in the mission told me and Sister Malphorus that we looked like twins. They just said we looked alike. I don't know why. Like, my mission president would refer to it all the time. He was like, oh, it's Sister Malphorus and Elder Passy. Or no, Elder Passy and Sister Malphorus. No, I said that backwards again. Elder Malphorus and Sister Passy. That's what they would always say to us. So they would jokingly switch our names because apparently we looked so much alike. In fact, my president takes a picture with us later on because he didn't want to forget the 2 sibling missionaries. So that was fun. This was a picture. So that was my pretty much last day in Treleo, and it was kind of a bummer. But this is a picture of my first day in Comodoro. I got off the bus at the bus station, and I got picked up by the zone leaders, which were Elder Cole and Elder Tavares, and I got picked up by Elder Rojas too. And they took us to our apartment, and they just dropped us off in a taxi, and they went home. And Elder Rojas and I get out of the taxi, and we walk up 4 flights of stairs to get to the very top of our apartment complex, and we walk in, and I remember I was like, exhausted from carrying all my luggage up, and we walk in, he opens the door, and I walk in, I just hear and I was like, what the freak was that? And I look down, And Elder Rojas hadn't been in his apartment for about a week and a half because Elder Wonkus, he was in the hospital with Elder Wonkus. And then when Elder Wonkus left, he was staying with the zone leaders, working in their area. And so it was kind of just a mess. And they just left the apartment really abruptly, so it was uncleaned and it was just disgusting. So anyways, when I walk in, I hear crunching. I look down, and I mean, there are bugs of every kind. I mean, cockroaches, maggots, just disgusting. Maggots everywhere. And I don't know what they had in their trash can, but I guess like flies had gotten in through an open window, laid eggs, maggots just got everywhere. It was so disgusting. And I remember I walked into the bathroom immediately after that, and the entire ceiling was just covered in black mold. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh. And then I went in, and right above my bed, I was on a bunk bed, and right above my bunk bed, there were just wet spot and black mold coming through the ceiling there too. And then they had a secondary bedroom where we had our desks, or no, we had our extra mattresses and our clothes and everything in there. And same thing, just like leaking and black mold just everywhere through this apartment. It's just a disgusting apartment. And I remember just being so confused, like, how can somebody live like this? Then I realized he didn't live there, but still, it was really gross. And Elder Rojas he was Argentine. He was from Buenos Aires, came from a very poor background, and he did live very unclean. And it was pretty sad, but that was all right. So I remember first thing I did, I didn't take out my clothes, didn't set up anything. We cleaned up, and that was that. We called that a day because it was already just disgusting, a mess, just horrific. I remember that was so gross, trying to clean that whole apartment. Later on in the day, some of the elders, Elder Spencer here and Elder McDonald, who I love both of them to death, they both came over to visit us in our apartment, make sure we got set up all right, and drop us off some stuff that they had borrowed from us. So that was pretty cool. I got to meet Elder Spencer here. My mom, I had sent home with Sister Coombs. When Sister Coombs left the mission, I had sent home some necklaces and things that I bought from the artisans in Calafate, and I sent them home. And so this is my mom and my sisters getting their necklaces and bracelets and everything that Sister Coombs brought home for them. So definitely, I really appreciate Sister Coombs bringing that home for all of them, because you can't send packages to her from Argentina really ever. So this, my mom loves and collects nativities, and this is a nativity set that I found and I bought for her. And then that was the glacier that I had sent home and some cool things like that. So my mom was just posting that. This is, my mom kept a map of my mission of where I served. So you can see Calafate here, my first area, Whiting, who she ended up putting right in Peterson. And then second area with Elder Tony from Brazil. And then third area with Rojas. And my time with Rojas was really hard. I was only with him for about 4.5 weeks, but it was really tough. We just both had very different styles of working, and it was really, really hard to get him to work. He just had a very different style than I did. And I was very driven, very motivated. He was at the very end of his mission, and he was ready to go home and just didn't really want to be there any longer. And so we did get into some pretty heavy fights. I was really in a really dark place during those 3 weeks, so I really didn't write home much, and I really didn't talk much about it, because my time with Elder Rojas was really hard on me. Along with that apartment having those problems, I actually ended up calling my mission president and his wife, and I said, hey, our apartment is like utterly disgusting. It's falling apart. There's black mold. There's bugs everywhere. And I don't think I communicated very well, and I probably didn't speak Spanish very well, so I'm not sure if there was a misunderstanding of some kind. But I was told that I needed to kind of take a chill pill and not be a stuck-up gringo that's just used to kind of the U.S. and everything like that. And so we ended up staying in that apartment for a while longer until the end of that transfer, which was pretty gross. About 3 or 4 days. Oh, no, that's a lie. About a week after our transfer, before our transfer was to end, we moved to a new apartment that was also kind of a mess. But my time with Elder Rojas was very short. Luckily, I had some really eye-opening experiences with Elder Rojas. We didn't get along at all. And it was really sad. And so what I really went to is we stayed in the apartment a lot. He liked to sleep a lot and nap a lot. And I couldn't really do anything. I couldn't leave the apartment by myself. So what I would do is I would sit and I'd read my scriptures. And there's only so much that you can do in a day, but that's where I really feel like I grew to grow my largest testimony of the scriptures and to really admire and love the scriptures with my whole heart. I remember within a matter of 1 week, I read the entire Book of Mormon, which is very hard to do. It's a lot of pages a day, a lot of chapters a day, but I didn't have anything else to do. So I'd sit there and I'd also study Spanish when I got tired of reading the Book of Mormon. And it was a very motivating experience for me to, number one, be the best missionary I could ever be after I finished my time with Elder Rojas, and to also just like go out of my way to learn Spanish, to be a better communicator, because I know that I was lacking communication with him because I struggled with Spanish. And then I also know that Spanish was just really hard for me. Long story short, Elder Rojas and I actually had to be separated because I had kind of had enough of him one day, and I called the mission president while he was asleep, and I said, "Hey, I'm really struggling with my companion, this, that, and the other." And my mission president goes, "I'm very sorry to hear that. You got me at like the perfect time. We're driving from Rio Gallegos to Coleta Olivia. I'm in a dead zone for about 6 hours. I just happened to pull over to get gas when you called me." So he goes, "I feel like this is very inspired that you called." And I said, "Yes, I've been trying not to call because I know that I should try to resolve these issues by myself." And he goes, "No, I've had these issues with Elder Rojas in the past." He said, "Elder Rojas comes from a very hard background, very, very tough life." Elder Rojas was 27, so he was a lot older of a missionary than I was. I was 19. And he goes, "I would just recommend you hold on to the phone, call your zone leaders. I'm going to have them split you up." And I was like, "Okay." So I called the zone leaders, talked to the zone leaders, and while I was on the phone with the zone leaders, Elder Rojas woke up from his nap, and he came out and he found me on the phone, and he was very upset that I was talking to the zone leaders about him. And the day before, a couple days before that, we'd had zone conference, and we weren't so really supposed to go outside of our zone. He took us to Comodoro North Zone, and there we were with the elders, and they decided, the elders that he was really good friends with, they decided it'd be funny to play a practical joke on me and shoot me with an airsoft gun a couple of times. So they ended up shooting me a couple times with an airsoft gun, and I was not very happy with that, number one. And then it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. A couple days later is when I ended up calling my mission president. Anyways, Elder Rojas came out of the bedroom and found me on the phone with the zone leaders, and he got mad. He said, "Give me the phone." I said, "No, the mission president asked me to remain with the phone until the zone leaders come to split us up." And he didn't like that answer, and he threw a punch, and it hit me in the face. So he hit me here and then in the shoulder, and it kind of like grazed my face, and it full-fledged hit me in the face, hit me in the shoulder. But that was enough to startle me. And the doors in Argentina are kind of crazy. The door in the new apartment that we'd moved into was a reverse lock kind of thing. So you could open the door from the inside, but in order to open the door from the outside, there was no knob. You just had to have the key, and it was a skeleton key. And so I grabbed the keys and I ran full sprint out that door, closed the door, and I locked it behind me. So he couldn't get out because we only had one key. So he couldn't get in, couldn't get out, couldn't follow me. And I just sat on the stairs of this apartment complex and I cried. I cried for a good 20 minutes because I was just didn't know what to think. And the zone leaders get there and they calmed me down a little bit, and they split us up. Elder Tavares stayed with Elder Rojas, and I went with Elder Cole back to their area, and we were separated for about 3 days. And then we had a meeting with what was supposed to be the mission president, but it ended up being his two assistants, and they didn't have the full information, and I had to communicate strictly in Spanish because it was a dual meeting. It was with Elder Rojas and I and the two assistants. And I remember it was Elder Jimenez and Elder Popa, which were our assistants, and Elder Jimenez and Elder Ekblat, which were our assistants. And Elder Ekblat was very level-headed, and Elder Jimenez was a very fiery elder, and he was super mad at us for wasting President's time and wasting his time, and he was super upset, and he'd made a threat to send us home, which I didn't understand fully, but that wasn't okay with me, and so I didn't have a very fond relationship with other Jimenez after that point. And long story short, I ended up meeting with my mission president later, that like a couple weeks later, for the following zone conference, and my mission president apologized to me for that and said that wasn't appropriate. And by this time, that assistant had been released, and so and he kind of knew that there was a problem there. Which that was a huge learning experience for me, because I learned a lot of patience, a lot of strong will, and a lot of speaking up against things that I saw were wrong. And that wasn't like me very much prior to that. I wasn't really one to speak up against things prior. I would kind of just let things happen and get figured out the way they need to get figured out. And this was one of those keystones that really made me the man I am today. So anyways, after that meeting with the assistants, they put us back together. They said, you're going back together, you're going to your area. And by that point, I'd kind of had my wits end with El de Rojas, and we had about a week and a half left in our transfer together. And so I had made some friends in the ward. I had met some members, and there was a newly returned home missionary from Uruguay. He served in Uruguay. It was the bishop of our ward. It was his son. His name was Eric. And Eric was just a great guy. He was super gung-ho about the missionary work still. And so he told me in the ward one time, he said, if you ever want to go out and teach, let me know. So I called him up one day and said, hey, Eric, I want to go out and teach. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up going to some of the converts' houses, the converts of some of the missionaries prior to Elder Rojas's time in this area. And we just dropped Elder Rojas off with the converts, with the member, the husband of the family, who's going to be his companion for a little bit. We did splits with the members. And I went out with Eric, and we just started knocking doors. And I remember we had received a reference or something from a tsunami that had happened, a tracting meeting that had happened. I received this reference to this house of this girl named Augustina. And I took Eric there with me, and we knocked on the door. And I had messaged and called Augustina a handful of times as I was working from our apartment, because we didn't leave very much. And Augustina said she was interested in meeting with us and also taking English lessons from us. And so we showed up at her house, and we knock on the front gate. We clapped at the front gate, because you always clap in Argentina. You don't knock, you clap. And she came out and talked to us for a long time. And it was really cool. We had a really spiritual lesson, and I'm standing there with Eric, and I just looked at Augustina. I said, Augustina, I want to invite you to be baptized. And I gave her a baptismal date. And I remember Eric's eyes were like this big, and he looks at me. He's like, okay. And she broke down. She started crying. She's like, I've been looking for something new, a change in my life. I think I can do that. Long story short, she started going to church with us. So I would do that quite frequently with Eric. When Eric wasn't working, I would call him, drop Elder Rojas off, and I'd go teach with Eric. And Elder Rojas would generally sit at a member's house and watch movies while we went and did work. And so that was the last about week and a half of our time together. And then luckily we got transfers. And again, I was so sick to my stomach the day of transfers, because I did not want to stay with Elder Rojas for another transfer. And we get transfers, and I get a phone call, and Elder Rojas is moving to Puerto Deseado. He's going to the Zone Caleta Olivia. I'm staying, and I'm getting another Argentine companion named Elder La Dueña, who ends up being one of the most amazing companions I had in my mission, and I had the most amazing experiences with Elder La Dueña. But I will leave that for the next episode. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys later. Bye, guys.